In this video, we are going to learn about exception handling. Now, exceptions are some conditions that might occur during the execution of our program. Now, it happens many a times that user might enter some different value which may cause some exception condition to take place. Now, in such a situation, I don't want PHP to give out a fatal error because in case any exception condition arises, PHP gives out a fatal error. So I don't want that because it actually gave out a negative impression. I don't want my code to give out a fatal error to my user. So for that, we have a concept called exception handling, which is mainly used to handle such exceptions that might occur in our program. Okay, so let's first see what is an exception. With PHP 5 came a new object-oriented way of dealing with errors. So this is an object-oriented way to deal with errors. Exception handling is used to change the normal flow of the code execution if a specified error condition occurs. So as I said, there are cases when some exception conditions might occur in our program. So these basically exception handling is used to change that normal flow because first these exception conditions are handled and then the normal execution will continue. So this condition is called an exception. This is what normally happens when an exception is triggered. So basically, whenever an exception is encountered, so the following things happen. First, the current code state is saved. Whatever execution has happened until now, that is saved. Then the code execution will switch to a predefined or a custom exception handler function. Now, to handle some exceptions, PHP has provided some predefined functions or inbuilt functions that we can use. Or even we can create our own custom functions to handle some exception. So it totally depends on the user what method you want to follow. You can use predefined functions or custom functions as well. Depending on the situation, the handler may then resume the execution from the saved code state, terminate the script execution, or continue the script from a different location in the code. Okay, so now let's move and let's learn the basic use of exception. Okay, basic use. When an exception is thrown, the code following it will not be executed and PHP will try to find the matching catch block. Means we have to keep our exception conditions. Means firstly, we should know when an exception condition might occur. If we think that yes, in this case, an exception condition might occur, we have to put that code inside the try block. And along with try, we have to write a catch block which will handle that exception. So whenever an exception condition is encountered, the PHP will look out for a catch block. Okay, because it is the main which is used to handle that exception. If an exception is not caught, because catch means we are catching that exception. Okay, so it is important to write the catch block. But if we don't write the catch block, that means exception is not caught and a fatal error will be issued with an uncaught exception message. So we'll get a fatal error which would say uncaught exception message. So I don't want that. So we will be learning about the syntax, what try block is, what is catch block, and how to catch these exceptions. Okay, but let's first understand the theory. Let's try to throw an exception without catching it. So first we will see what happens when I throw an exception without catching it. Okay, let's see. So this is the code for it. Here I have created a function with an exception because I think that exception condition can occur in this case. Here I have a function called checkNum, which is taking one argument, integer argument number. If this number is greater than 5, okay, that means we have to throw an exception, okay, because I don't want this number to be greater than 5. It should be always less than 5. But in case, because it can happen that user might enter a number which is greater than 5. So in that case, I will throw an exception that the value must be 5 or below. Okay, so this is my very simple code. So here I am throwing an exception if the condition is true. But as you can see, I haven't caught this exception. I haven't written any function which can catch this exception. So in this case, we will get to see that fatal error. Okay, and here I'm just calling this function and passing the value. So this 10 will be stored inside this variable number, and 10 is greater than 5. That means this exception will be thrown, but it won't be caught. Okay, so we will get the fatal error. Let's see. We will just see this in an IDE. Okay, so we have PHP tags, and here I will just create a function check num, which will take one argument number, and inside this I will just write if my number is greater than 5, so throw an exception. Now for throwing an exception, this syntax is use the keyword throw followed by the keyword new followed by the keyword exception. Okay, now this exception is basically a class. Okay, see, if I hover over this, I can see exception is the base class for all exception. So I'm basically creating an object of this class and I'm just throwing it, and you can just give out any message that value must be below. Okay, I'll just say value must be 5 or below. uh just semicolon. Okay, now what I will do here is I will just call this function check num, and I will pass a value 10, so that this condition is satisfied and hence the exception will be thrown. Okay, okay, I'll just say here else. If not, then I will just say else. We could just say echo value is below 5. Okay, now we will just run this program. Now in this case 10 is obviously greater than 5, so this exception will be thrown, but I'm not catching this exception anywhere. Okay, so a fatal error will be displayed. I will just go to my browser. Okay, and I'll just reload this page. Okay, so as you can see, a fatal error has been displayed. A fatal error uncaught exception. Okay, so I don't want this to be displayed. Okay, so for this I need to catch this exception. We have to catch it, there is no other option. Okay, so let's go to PPT and learn how to catch them. Now we in order to handle exceptions, we have to make use of these three: try, throw and catch to handle the exception. To avoid the error from the example above, the example that we just saw, we need to create the proper code to handle an exception. It is important to handle such exceptions. Okay, proper exception code should include, okay, so what all things it should include? First, we should have a try block. A function using an exception should be in a try block. Means whenever we write any exception conditions, means a condition that might lead to exception, so we have to write that code inside the try block. If the exception does not trigger, the code will continue as normal. Okay, if that exception condition does not arise, the code will continue as normal. However, if the exception triggers, an exception is thrown. So my second step is how to throw that exception. Use the keyword throw. This is how you trigger an exception. Each throw must have at least one catch. Okay, so if you are throwing two exceptions, that means you should have two catch blocks, because one catch block is used to catch one exception. So if you are throwing two exceptions, that means you require two catch blocks. Okay, so they both are dependent on each other. Then we have a catch block. A catch block retrieves an exception, means it will catch that exception. It will create an object containing the exception information. Okay. So we will be learning that, means the main part is here only. This one. Okay. So I have just modified this example for you all. Okay. So let's see. We have a function check num. Okay, and I'm just checking whether my number is greater than 5 or not. If the number is greater than 5, I'm just throwing this exception that the value must be 5 or below. So this we know, but here I have made some changes. Here I have called this function inside a try block. As I said, the condition that might lead to exception should be put inside the try block. Okay, so I'm just calling out this function, and this function is consisting of this condition. So that's why I have put this inside the try block. Then I have a catch block. Here I have created an object of the class exception, that is E, object E. And I'm just printing out the message E. Means I'm just calling this method get message. Get message means this message will be printed onto the screen. Value must be 5 or below. So this is an inbuilt method in PHP, inbuilt function in PHP, which is used to display the message, whatever message that we have passed here. So using that object, I can call this function, and this message will be printed. So here, if you notice, I have used inbuilt method. So let's move to IDE, and here I will just make some changes. Okay, only fewer changes. I will just remove. Firstly, I'll remove the else block. Okay, I'll just keep it, and I will call this function inside a try block. Okay, it is important to keep the exception condition inside the try block, and then we have a catch block. And inside this, I will first create an object. Let's name the object as E for now. And here I will just echo that message, echo, and I'll just call that method using this object. And we know how to call methods, we have already learned. So get message is an inbuilt method in PHP that you can use. So basically message means this one. I'm talking about this message that we have passed here. So this will be printed. So using this method, I can access this message. So here in this case, I am passing a value 10. So obviously this will lead to exception. So we'll get to see value must be 5 or below. So now we won't get to see the fatal error because we are handling that exception. Okay, so I'll just go to the browser. Okay, and I'll just reload this. Okay, so as we can see, value must be 5 or below. Okay, so this was all about exception handling. You can use predefined functions, or even you can create your own functions and then you can call that function inside the catch block. See, here we have made use of the predefined function, but if you create your own function, you have to just call that function inside the catch block. So this is all about exception handling in PHP. Thank you.